They are the eyes and ears of the modern army.
It's almost literally like an antenna raised several kilometers high.
Airborne early warning and control aircraft such as the E-3 Sentry. These unique and sophisticated machines, costing up to $500 million, are capable of independently monitoring vast areas.
This helps distinguish the good guys from the bad guys.
Although many countries have worked on developing such flying radars, only the USA and the USSR have succeeded.
The aircraft is essentially capable of operating in any hostile environment.
So let's find out which is better, the Russian-Soviet A-50 Oplot or the American Boeing Sentry.
Putin has undoubtedly awakened a true sleeping dragon.
Since the beginning of the last century, right after the invention of radars, engineers from around the world began working on increasing the detection range of aerial targets. On the ground, radars, although they showed excellent results, were limited by terrain and various interferences. The sky is a different matter. By lifting the radar into the air, its effectiveness increased manifold, as did its tactical range. In the era of jet aviation, the Americans were the first to launch their airborne early warning aircraft into the sky. In October 1975, Boeing introduced its famous Boeing E-3 Sentry to the world.
By this time, radar technology had advanced so far that it required radical solutions. For this purpose, the US Air Force signed preliminary contracts for development with Boeing.
Based on the cargo Boeing 707er, the new eyes and ears of the Pentagon had an extremely peculiar shape. This was all thanks to the circular radar antenna mounted on struts 4 meters above the fuselage.
So, when you think of AWACS, the first thing you probably think of is the huge radar dish on top. It's the large rotating antenna of the aircraft.
This radome has a diameter of over 9 meters with a thickness of almost 2. Inside, it houses a 4-ton radar that makes a rotation every 10 seconds and was controlled in the 70s by a 16-bit computer. Despite what seems like laughable power today, the first prototypes of the Boeing Sentry could simultaneously track up to 100 targets. The introduction of new processors allowed this capability to be expanded several times over, as well as the overall capabilities of the American flying radar. It is known that the E-3 is capable of detecting large, high-altitude targets like bombers at distances of up to 500 and sometimes even 650 kilometers, while small objects with a size of 1 square meter moving at low altitudes above the ground can be detected at distances of up to 425 kilometers. At the same time, the airborne radar can track up to 400 or more potential targets simultaneously.
When it comes to this aircraft, one can talk about it for hours. The E-3 truly resembles a flying control tower. It helps distinguish the good guys from the bad guys. And instead of being fixed on a specific area on the ground, AWACS brings this capability to the sky using its massive rotating radar dome. It detects everything in its path.
However, despite the complexity of operating this unique Boeing, pilots admit that it is a pleasure to fly. The 4-engine turbojet propels the 707 to a maximum speed of 880 km per hour with a cruising speed of 750. On a single refueling, the radar is ready to patrol the skies for up to 6 hours, at a distance of 1,600 kilometers from the airfield. After refueling in the air, though a feature with which the American Boeing is equipped, the 150-ton aircraft is ready to stay in the sky for up to 11 hours. Meanwhile, the 707 is operated by only 4 crew members, with an additional average of 13 to 19 people, as the operational team servicing the radar during the flight.
When this Sky Leviathan majestically ascends into the vast expanse of the sky, there are only 17 to 25 personnel on board. It is they who become the eyes of the army in the sky.
It is worth noting that in the 80s, the USSR was actively engaged in the development and launch of its own airborne radar. The response to the Americans eventually became the A-50 aircraft, nicknamed Mainstay by NATO, created based on the Il-76 military transport aircraft at the Taganrog Aviation Scientific and Technical Complex. The Soviet long-range radar detection aircraft outwardly resembled its American counterpart, but the A-50's characteristics were slightly better than its overseas older brother. With a length of 48 meters and a wingspan of 50, this fully loaded with fuel and electronics 190-ton machine develops a cruising speed of 800 kilometers per hour, has a more modest practical range than the Boeing, only 7,500 kilometers, but a much longer flight duration of over 9 hours, without refueling.
This is the aircraft through which the management of Russian troops in the theater of military operations is carried out.
That is, all communication with command posts and units, divisions, headquarters is conducted through this aircraft. It's like an antenna raised several kilometers high.
As for the Il-76 radar, its radar station, operating in the centimeter range, was capable of detecting a target of the fighter class flying at low altitude at a range of up to 200 to 400 kilometers, and at high altitude from 300 to 600. And the A-50 could see naval targets at a distance of up to 400 kilometers. At the same time, the number of simultaneously tracked targets by Soviet equipment reached 150.
The A-50 is specifically designed for detecting aerial targets, including not only ground, but also aerial targets. Ground targets are radar. Active and aerial targets are fighters.
The A-50 also served as an airborne command post used for alerting troops about the aerial and surface situation and for controlling strike aviation.
Its range of vision, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, is about 600 kilometers when it is airborne. It can detect any contrasting targets, meaning any targets that are illuminated and that reflect, or more precisely, reflect electromagnetic emissions. It determines the coordinates, and then these coordinates are processed and provided as target indications for missile forces and aviation.
It turns out that if you compare the American Boeing Sentry with its Soviet counterpart, the A-50, the latter, although slightly, still surpasses its competitor. However, there's one caveat. While the American airborne radar began patrolling in the mid-80s, the Soviet counterpart only did so in 1989, right before the collapse of the Soviet Union. At the same time, the cost of each Ilyushin modified for military needs was much higher than its overseas counterpart. The price of the A-50 at the beginning of the 90s was $250 to $270 million, which was more expensive than building a single Tu-160 or An-124.
According to open sources, one such aircraft costs $330 million. Just a moment. These were practically, as I already mentioned, the eyes and ears of the Russian missile forces and the aerospace forces, which carry out strategic aviation, which conducts missile strikes on territory. They determined the coordinates of targets for missile strikes.
The high cost of the A-50, which is now Russian rather than Soviet, played a cruel joke on the Iron Bird. After the collapse of the USSR, the production of flying radars significantly decreased. As a result, from 1989 to today, Russia has managed to assemble only 31 units, albeit with difficulty.
Russia has few such aircraft, and accordingly there is not a large reserve.
Out of the 3,000 Ilyushins declared by the Kremlin, only a few are still currently in operation and remain in service today.
These aircraft are partially at aircraft repair plants, partially undergoing some scheduled maintenance. That is supposed to be done once a month or once every 3 months. And some are combat ready.
Even a series of upgrades did not save the Russian A-50. In 2003, Russia began upgrading the radar systems that were in service. The updated aircraft was designated as the A-50U. In addition to work on the radio technical complex, the onboard control and communication systems were improved. and the radio operators' workstations were upgraded with LCD monitors and more modern equipment. But the Russian upgrades significantly increased the cost of the already expensive aircraft, making it completely non-competitive.
We don't know what we're looking for, sort of.
As a result, the only operator of the radar besides Russia itself became India. At one time it signed a contract for the supply of 3 A-50s for its own needs. However, the Boeing E-3 is in service with the air forces of the USA, the UK, France, Saudi Arabia, as well as NATO, as an international organization that specifically purchased these aircraft to ensure the combat readiness of alliance members. Meanwhile, serial production was discontinued until 1992. Boeing built as many as 68 aircraft and continuously upgrades them, sparing neither effort nor time.
The aircraft is actually capable of operating in any hostile environment. Putin has awakened a true sleeping dragon without actually having guarantees that he has something to counter this very dragon.
Even though the Russian A-50 loses to the American in terms of technical equipment, costs more than Boeing, and also has serious issues with spare parts due to sanctions imposed against Russia, in one aspect it is an absolute champion. Unlike the American Boeing, the Russian Ilyushin is the absolute winner in the category of shot down. The A-50 operated over the Black Sea during the Iraq War, was involved in monitoring the airspace over Chechnya since the end of 1994, and in 2015 became part of the aviation group of the Russian aerospace forces in Syria. The flying radar was also actively used during Russia's full-scale invasion, and it was Ukraine that, for the first time in the world, managed to seriously damage an A-50 aircraft as a result of a drone attack in February 2023. Almost a year later, in January 2024, Ukrainian defenders managed to shoot down a second aircraft over the Sea of Azov, and a month later, a third aircraft of the latest A-50U modification, which had rolled off the production line only in 2019, fell in the Krasnodar region.
We are world record holders. Firstly, record holders because for the first time such an aircraft of this type was hit in the air. This is a world record. No one else has done this so far. Well, our second record is that this is already the second aircraft of this type shot down in the air by our air defense systems.
That's all. Did you like the video? Give it a like. Write in the comments about which weaponry you would like to learn in the next episode, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new episodes of Arsenal.